Where is the 7th generation Ford Mustang? Well, the production version was unveiled 12 months ago and was supposed to land in Aussie showrooms, well, any minute now, but production delays have pushed that back to Q1 next year. But why wait? So Chasing Cars has come to the US to drive the new generation pony car, and not just the 2.3 litre Ecoboost version or the regular and proper V8 GT, but this, the high performance flagship called Dark Horse. So where are we? We've come to Charlotte Motor Speedway in North Carolina, and we're going to see what it's like as a track car. We're also going to do a road trip and take it to the famed Blue Ridge Parkway, as well as the Appalachian Mountain Range. As they say, it's a dirty horse, but somebody's got to ride it. But before I settle up and assault you with more terrible horsey cliches, let's find out what's new with 7th generation Mustang and find out what the go is with the Go Fast version that has one of the coolest names in motoring today. Chasing Cars, honest reviews of your next car.
Brought to you by
Budget Direct.
Of course, inside and out, the Dark Horse version does get its own aggressive styling, and that extends from everything from the colorization to the wheels. That said, the chassis and the basic underpinnings of this 7th generation are basically carried over from the old generation. Of course, the time-honoured 5.0 V8 remains an integral part of Mustang's DNA, and it's available here in the US in 3 different engine tunes. The Dark Horse lifts power further to 373 kilowatts, or a neat old-school 500 horsepower. In fact, it makes the same power as the old GT500, which was 5.4 litres and supercharged. Forged conrods, a balanced crankshaft and revised cam gear help it spin to 7,500 RPM. And that higher red line means that it does make an extra 11 kilowatts if without any extra torque. So I'm going to grab a helmet, we're going to hit the track including its 24-degree banks, and we're going to see what it's like on circuit. All right, let's check this out. Charlotte Motor Speedway. Bit of Days of Thunder action. Right, coming off the bank into the braking area. It's pretty stable under brakes. Don't want to compression lock up. These are P04s, and they're not the super sticky Trofeo RSs that you get on the option handling pack. It's a really tight little track, this. Really nice steering. It doesn't have a huge amount of bite on the turn-in. All right, let's go back onto the oval. Engine just sounds magnificent. The gear shift's really sort of quite heavy and tightly gated. A little bit nervous about changing gear on a bank. I actually just got out of the 10-speed auto, which had the grippier tyres, and I must say the manual is a much better option for track. Really is just a nice, characterful, intoxicating, muscular engine, this. And this is the 4th generation Coyote all-alloy engine. Brakes are really strong in this too, so it gets 6 piston Brembos with 390mm front rotors. All right, back onto the oval again. Really does make me nervous changing gears on a bank track. Wow, what an experience. I mean, you could go through the gears, but this engine actually has so much torque that it's really unnecessary. The tail's nice and reactive, bit of a dip here, so you can really sort of manhandle and play with this Mustang. The new Mustang has adopted a fresher look, although one that's not vastly more modern. However, it has ditched a lot of the old school retro kitsch. And it's pretty important that Ford doesn't ditch a lot of that old school charm in really maintaining that muscle car character. Pride of place is this display unit, which sort of has a crease in the middle for a slightly wraparound effect that faces the driver. The driver's screen is 12.4 inches, and like the old car, the display skins do change when you change the drive modes. Meanwhile, the media screen is 13.2 inches, and you can configure it in such a way that it looks like it is a massive widescreen. The media system uses Ford Sync 4 software and now groups some of the audio and all of the climate controls into the touchscreen, which in my view is a bit of a backward step. Ford is adamant that the decision was made because of customer feedback, including old school Mustang owners, though it is a bit of a shame some of the old details, such as the neat jet fighter little toggle switches, have now disappeared. The new flat bottom steering wheel is pretty neat, though some of the switch gear is pretty mundane and could be found in really any Ford model of the current generation. The standard seats are actually pretty good, and cloth and a combination of fake leather is pretty much par for the course, although this car gets the cost optional Recaros, which are a one-off option in Australia. In the front, It's low slung seating, the visibility is really good. You've got that kind of hunkered down muscle car vibe. In the rear, the second row, well, there's no more room than the old car, and it's really best treated as a two-seater. As the Dark Horse name suggests, it is quite dark in here, and it gets lashings of carbon fibre, or what looks like fake carbon fibre. And you get a lot of blue highlights, regardless of which exterior paint you choose. The black finish on the bezels and air vents are also Dark Horse specific, and each car gets its own individual build number. A real highlight for me in the manual is this titanium anodized gear knob, which is specific to the Dark Horse. But if you do opt for the auto, you get anodized silver paddle shifters. This car is fitted with a really cool electronic drift brake, but it's not going to be offered in Australia. Buyers here in the US can also option a whole variety of appearance upgrades too for the exterior, so let's go check out some of those as well. Some of the options include a choice of 3 different custom bonnet designs. However, all of the Dark Horses get a specific front fascia and its own specific front splitter. Unlike the regular 7th generation, which can fit anything from 17 to 20-inch wheels, the Dark Horse only gets 19-inch wheels. And the handling pack here in the US gets a choice of a wider wheel, and there's also a carbon fibre option which won't be available in Australia because it doesn't comply with ADRs. Tyres for Australia will be the regular summer Pirelli P0s. However, here in the US, the handling pack gets bespoke, wider Trofeo RS versions. And my favourite angle of the new 7th generation Mustang in its Dark Horse, guys, is from the rear. It looks utterly fantastic, particularly in this signature red colour. Another specific feature is the rear wing, which is a different spec from the normal GT, and the Dark Horse gets its own logo. And it is the first time that a Mustang Horse logo has looked straight on at camera. There's a bit of trivia for you. Right, time to hit the road now for our road trip. So this 4th generation of the Coyote V8 makes 373 kilowatts and 566 newton meters. That's only 11 kilowatts up on the regular GT's V8, but it's been enhanced with the internals in order for it to spin to 7,500 RPM, safely and consistently on racetrack and really not fall apart. So we're out on the road loop at the moment, about 350 kilometers, and we're up on the Blue Ridge Parkway, which is part of the Appalachian Mountains. Now, I've spent a couple of 100 Ks in both this regular spec and the handling package spec, and they're both very good cars out on road. But really, it's the version that we get in Australia without the handling package that is the nicer car out on road. The Dark Horse sounds fantastic. You get that same sort of bold metallic exhaust note like the old GT, but it's just beefier and more prominent this time around. Typical of this naturally aspirated Mustang engine, that doesn't have a lot of shove in the low mid-range, and you really need to downshift and kick it in the slats to get a move on once you're up to speed. The Dark Horse does fit the Tremec 6-speed manual, which has 1:1 ratio in the 5th gear, whereas the Getrag, which is fitted to the GT version, has 1:1 at 4th gear, so 2 overdrive speeds. What the Tremec and the Dark Horse does is stack the ratios more closely together and makes the car punchier off the mark and through the gears. It also gets a very short 3.73 to 1 final drive ratio with a Torsen LSD. Even on these summer tyres in reasonably damp conditions, it has plenty of grip. But it's not merely just the grip that makes this car so handy and noticeably better than the 6th generation. It is wonderfully fluid and feels quite tied down, balanced and very responsive to driver input. So how has Ford gone about that? Well, the Dark Horse actually ups the suspension spring rates by 2 steps. It can go 1 step even stiffer, which is part of the handling package that's not going to be available in Australia. But together with its specific MagnaRide adaptive damping, the ride and handling balance is really well judged for the regular Dark Horse. As a Grand Tourer and out on this tight and twisty mountain road, it's just a really pleasant car to drive. But it's still got plenty of sportiness. Right, let's check out that engine at full noise. It's got a real sort of motorsport vibe to it. The steering too is completely re-engineered. Hardware, software, the whole shebang. And it feels a lot tighter, more direct, even more cooperative than the last 6th generation Mustang, which could feel a little bit rubbery, particularly around the center. There's just a really nice, crisper, sharper edge to this new generation, particularly the Dark Horse. It just feels really flat, grippy, and cooperative. but it's just not overly stiff at the same time. It does get quite noisy in here, but not excessively so, and the volume is what you would expect from a proper muscle car. Overall, it's both a more polite and a more potent evolution of the Mustang formula. There's also quite a bit more active safety in this new generation of Mustang, though there's really none of it that's intrusive when you're out on a country road. However, when you do start toggling between normal and sport drive modes and the various track and drag racing modes as well, you can do so using a button on the steering wheel. The brakes on this car are the 390mm 6-piston front Brembos, and they're fantastically powerful. I really like this new 7th generation Mustang. And in fact, if you expect that the Dark Horse is going to be a little bit too hardcore for your taste, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised if you were to invest into this potent version and use it as a grand tourer or a daily driver. My pick, I would go for the 6-speed manual. The 10-speed auto is pretty good, although the 6-speed manual is much more rewarding when you are up it for the rent. The clutch take-up is good. I do like the feel of this Tremec gearbox as well. So the gates are nice and tight, the throw's nice and positive, and there's decent weight to it without it being excessive or too agricultural. It really does feel like a fine car for both on-road and on track. So we've driven the new 7th generation Mustang on track and about 550 kilometers on a 3-day road trip. So what do we think? Well, Ford did a really good job with the outgoing 6th generation Mustang, making it a proper global vehicle. And this new 7th generation is a fine evolution that doesn't really mess with the recipe. But I must say, it is better than that, because in this Dark Horse form, 500 horsepower, it is an extremely potent car, and yet it is nicer and friendlier to live with than the old outgoing regular GT. Ford Australia hasn't revealed local pricing or spec yet for when this arrives in Q1 next year, but it's expected that the Ecoboost Coupe will start from around $60,000. So where does it put the Dark Horse? Well, you can expect to pay around 100 grand for the all-you-can-eat high-performance version. Is it worth a steep price? Well, from our experience with this particular version and versions like it on track and on-road stateside, the answer is absolutely yes. But given that the current outgoing GT is still sold out 10 years on, you'd better not snooze if you want to get your hands on this extra special Dark Horse edition. And no, we don't get the fancy handling pack or the carbon fiber wheels or the drift handbrake. But I gotta say that the spec that we are gonna get in Australia is really good, and you won't be disappointed. Well, that's what I think, but how about you? Put your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe while you're at it. And as always, thanks for watching Chasing Cars.